recording as of right now, so that for anybody who is watching, remotely and who wasn't able to come today, this is going to be our first LatinX Voices in Space panel that we hold. And what better timing to celebrate some amazing members of the Latinx space community than our Hispanic Heritage Month, right? My name is Juan de la Garza.
Hello, my name is Andrés Mazas, and we're going to be your moderators tonight. We will now have our wonderful panelists introduce themselves. If you could please tell us a little bit about yourselves, your names, and what you do. Let's start with Ginger.
Hi everyone, I'm Ginger Kerrick. I have worked at NASA for 28 years. I was born and raised in El Paso, Texas. My father was from Owensboro, Kentucky, but my mom was from Delicias, Chihuahua. So I am the product of a unique combination. My dad was a dairy farmer and my mom only had a 6th grade education. So it was a unique thing when I decided at 5 that I told them I wanted to work at NASA. But they were very supportive and helped me get a really good education and pushed me to do well in both school and athletics. So I was able to get scholarships and then finally my dream job at NASA. Since I've been at NASA, I've had quite a wide variety of jobs. I started off as a materials research engineer in the safety organization, and then I moved over to start training astronauts, both in the United States and then in Russia. So I got to train the first crew that would fly on board the space station, and we've been manning that space station for 20 years now. I'm coming up in October, so it's quite an accomplishment. After that, I was able to work in mission control as the first person that was ever not an astronaut to be a CAPCOM, a capsule communicator, the person that talks to the crew in space. And then after I did that, I became the first female Hispanic flight director in NASA's history, and I served as a flight director till 2012. And since 2012, I've been in a variety of different management positions at NASA, and I'm currently the Deputy Director of the Exploration, Integration, and Science Directorate, and we're outlining plans to return to the moon and plans to go to Mars. So I'm super excited to be here and share my experiences with you, so thanks for having me.
Thank you, Ginger. Next, let's have Lilibeth.
Hey everyone, my name is Lilibeth Mata, and I graduated from Rice in 2013. I was at Martell College. I don't know if any of you guys are from Martell. Yay. I studied computational and applied math, and after that I got an internship and then a full-time offer to work in the Safety and Mission Assurance Directorate at NASA's Johnson Space Center, where I've been working for the past 7 years. I mostly have been doing risk and reliability analysis, supporting our Orion program, as well as commercial crew, and now our human landing system program. And I have also done a year-long rotation in our structural division at NASA, and specifically I worked some thermal vacuum testing and thermal analysis jobs. And I also received an academic fellowship while at NASA, so I was able to go back to graduate school and get my master's in industrial engineering at U of H. In addition to all of that, I kind of on the side love to give back to the Rice community, and while at Rice, I was an active member, captain, and officer of the Rice Elves dance team. And since then, this is actually going to be my 5th year as head coach of the team. So I am always at Rice, always at games, and love to interact with all of the great students at Rice University. So that's me. Oh, and my background, I'm originally from Los Angeles, but I grew up here in Houston. Went to South Houston High School just down the road. And my parents are from Culiacan, Sinaloa. And my mom is from Culiacan, Sinaloa, and my dad is from near Guadalajara, Jalisco.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, let's have Pedro introduce himself.
Hey everyone, can you all hear me and see me? Yes, okay, great. Okay, so let's some background. So I was actually born in Mexico, so in a small town close to Monterrey. It's called Montemorelos, Nuevo León. I actually attended school in Mexico until I was in 8th grade, completed 8th grade, and then we moved to South Texas. Went to and completed high school in South Texas. Graduated in 1995. I was actually I graduated as valedictorian, and then just got some academic and also athletic scholarships. I went to UT Pan American, got both my bachelor's and master's in mechanical engineering in 2000 and 2003. And then after that, we actually moved to Houston. I started working for some companies, and then I joined Boeing. That was in 2004, 2003, and that was right after the Columbia accident. So the very first task that I worked with Boeing as an aerothermal analyst was actually working on fixing the what caused the accident. So that was the very first project that I worked on. I stayed with Boeing until 2007. That's when I joined NASA. So I've been with NASA since then. It's been almost 13 years now. And so I started working as part of the. I was the technical manager for aerodynamics and aerothermodynamics for the space shuttle program, the systems engineering and integration office. And that was until the shuttle retired in 2011. Then right after that, I was awarded a NASA fellowship so that I could pursue my PhD at Rice. So I got my PhD at Rice in 2014, also in mechanical engineering. Then after that, I spent some time working with ISS, International Space Station. Then spent about 3-4 years working on concepts for future potential missions, such as going to explore an asteroid, going to Mars, putting something in a lunar orbit, things like that. So all of those studies became basically the foundation of what is now known as Gateway. So I was part of that team that put together all of those concepts and studies that are now what we know as Gateway. And then in 2016, I moved to safety mission assurance. I actually was very close to working really close to Lilibeth. And I was there till just August. With safety mission assurance, I was working with ESD. I was focusing on mainly Orion, SLS, the launch system, and also Gateway and the human landing system. And now I'm working as the Deputy Certification Manager for Commercial Crew for the Boeing contract. So basically, I'm now responsible for, I'm part of the team that's responsible for certifying the Boeing capsule, so we can actually transport crew to ISS. And that's in a nutshell what what I've done so far. So yeah, happy to be here and happy to share my path to NASA. Thanks.
Wow, thank you all for those wonderful introductions. And again, thank you so much for being with us tonight. I know we really appreciate it, setting this up, and everybody at Rice has been asking for this. So thank you all for taking the time to come with us today. We can now kick off our panel. We do have a list of prepared questions for our panelists, but if the audience has any questions during the time of the panel, please feel free to just send them in the chat. There's plenty of us here, Andrés, Ryan, and I, that could always can find those questions and we can ask you guys those questions as well. So please feel free to ask any questions. In terms of the format of the answers, panelists, you can feel free to answer in any order that you'd like. We'd love to hear how your experiences may differ, be similar, like you said, maybe they intertwined at some point. So yeah, without further ado, we can start off with our first question tonight. what does the Latinx representation look like in your workplace in the aerospace industry?
All right, I'll go first. So it depends. So it depends on your field of study. But I know that there are I'm in what you call senior executive service. So at NASA, you have these different organizations, and then you have leaders of those organizations. There are probably, I think there's 4 of us that are in that type of leadership position. In engineering, you know, I recruit them all the time because we go back to UTEP to recruit. We go to other minority serving institutions to recruit. And I remember being in the flight control room, and there are plenty of people of Hispanic origin that are supporting. But it varies between what programs we support and what organizations we support. So I know from operations perspective and from upper management perspective, but maybe Lilibeth and Pedro have some insights to share with their experiences with their programs.
Sure. I guess I'll say I've been lucky enough that, you know, when I joined NASA, our, you know, top level manager, which is our center director at NASA, happened to be the first Hispanic female astronaut that flew in space, which was Dr. Ellen Ochoa. And I was lucky enough to have attended Ginger Kerrick's you know, speeches and I guess I will say there were plenty of minority leaders and minority, you know, employees that I was able to see. But at the same time, there are, you know, some, especially working in an organization such as Safety and Mission Assurance, where a lot of the employees there have been there for a very long time and have a ton of experience. If you look back, you know, 40, 50 years ago at NASA, the demographic wasn't as diverse back then. And so that has kind of trickled into the experience level that we have in our Safety and Mission Assurance Directorate. And of course, more and more we are recruiting, you know, employees of diverse backgrounds. We, myself and Pedro actually have been very active in our Hispanic employee resource groups at NASA. And we do have different resource groups for a bunch of different affinity groups. And, you know, through that, we do like to go back to different schools and conferences such as the SHPE conference and many other, you know, Great Minds in STEM and many other programs and conferences to recruit students and just talent of diverse backgrounds. So I will say there's still improvements that can be made, but we really are definitely growing and trying to do better in that aspect.
Yeah, what Lilibeth said. Yeah, basically that's it. So throughout the time that I've been at NASA, I think it's been growing. You see more and more diversity, not just Hispanics. You also see African Americans. You see pretty much, you know, all different, just like you know, groups being represented. And so yes, I've seen, and I guess one of the things that have helped me, and I'm guessing also a little bit, is the fact that we've been so active with the Hispanic ERG, and so now we are more aware of the number of Hispanic employees that are at now, especially just at Johnson. Because otherwise I wouldn't have known that there were so many of us. So yes, with respect to the the very first group that I was, the SENI with the Space Shuttle program, I believe that, let's say, out of 20 people, maybe 3 or 4 were Hispanic. So you know, within that group, there weren't that many of us. But yes, as you actually reach out and you become more active in all of these different groups, that all these opportunities that are given to you or available to you through the affinity groups, then you realize that you're not alone, and there's a lot of people that are just like you, and that share interests, share backgrounds, and I think that's one of the advantages and one of the nice things of working at NASA.
I guess I'll add on a little bit more to that answer. I actually the high school that I went to was about 90% Hispanic. So I came, to RISE with a very different experience of just having everyone around me be the same, listen to the same type of music, have the same type of background, and just the same traditions as me. So going to RISE was kind of a culture shock, and seeing the amount of students that just come from, internationally and in general, just have very different experiences from me. And so I think that really helped me coming into NASA, where, in my group that I'm currently in, I think I'm one of 2 females, the only person under 40 or maybe 50 at this point, and the only non-white person. So it took me a little bit to feel comfortable, but I think that the preparation I had, kind of having seen a little bit of, just being comfortable with not being the only, or being the only or just having people that are not necessarily like me, that experience at RISE kind of helped me go into NASA and not feel weird just because everyone around me wasn't like me or didn't have the same experiences as me.
Thank you, and thank you for the expansion as well. On to our next question. What has been the most fulfilling experience you've had that was made possible through the work you've done at NASA, or even in the past coming up in your career?
I'll start that one because I'm pretty sure my colleagues have amazing experiences to share, just from the amount of experience that they have. But I think for me, it's actually been giving back and sharing my experiences with students, and with, especially being a representation for minorities. I feel like sometimes, you work at NASA and you think, oh my God, it's great, it's cool. But you work there so long, or you work there and you kind of just get in a mindset of getting, you don't even appreciate how awesome it is to work for this type of programs that are, international, that really, very few people get to work on. So I think once you actually start talking to people about it, you really are like, dang, I really have a cool job. People pay money to come tour my job. And, it just makes you realize that it's such a sort of a wide, wide span of, that it reaches so many people. And, people from different countries. NASA is an American organization, obviously, but people from different countries are in awe of NASA. So I think just giving back and sharing our work and sharing our mission to get, humans in space is what's most fulfilling for me.
All right, I'll go ahead and add on to that. So I agree with her. That is one of my, I've had a lot of cool jobs at NASA, and there are cool things we've done. I've trained the first crew. I've dealt with a fire on board the space station. We've dealt with repairing the solar array when it was messed up. So there's all these events that I've done that were cool. But I think one of the coolest things that happens to me repeatedly, because she mentioned that she heard me talk. I talk to the interns every semester for almost the last 10 years. And I used to do recruiting for NASA. And I have actually, my best day was I was walking down the hallway, and this person came up to me and, Miss Kerrick, and I didn't recognize them, but it was somebody that I had interacted with either when they were an intern or when they were at school, and they said, "You're the reason I'm here." And there's no crying at NASA, but I cried that day in the hallway. Like, oh my God, because the reason I do this is so many people, I think, sell themselves short. I think so many people are looking for somebody like them, or looking at the jobs that we do here and thinking, oh, I could never do that, man. And the reality is, anybody can do. I am not special. And so I want to encourage people to challenge themselves and go off and chase their dreams. And so when I see that walking down the hall, I'm like, yes, some talk I gave inspired this person to believe in themselves. And so those are my most satisfying moments and continue to be.
Okay, so I guess it's my turn. So before I actually say the just like Ginger and Lilibeth, I'm sure that there were a number of things that have happened during the time that I've worked at NASA. But I just want to give you some background as to where I come from. So I just like I was born in Mexico. So when I got here, I didn't speak the language. I was supposed to go to 9th grade, and I was brought down 3 grades. So I was taken down to 6th grade. I had to make up those years. I had to basically finish high school in less than 4 years, so 3.5 years. And I'm here. So I mean, if I can make it, I think anyone can make it. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. And then in terms of the experiences, the things that I've been able to do because of what I've done with NASA. Right after the Columbia accident, so I was actually working on space station when the Columbia accident occurred. And then that was early 2003. Late 2003, I actually transferred to the shuttle program, and I started working as an aero heating analyst. Basically, when they started the investigation with what had happened to Columbia, they realized that it was just a piece of foam that had come off of the external tank, the orange tank. And during ascent, that piece of foam came and hit the leading edge of the wing on Columbia. And so what we were trying to do to fix that was to get rid of all those big pieces of foam that were on the tank. And so at the time, everybody thought that the main issue was an aerodynamic issue. And so as we removed those big ramps, the major effect on the integrated vehicle was going to be aerodynamic. And so I was an aerothermal analyst. I was just starting. They also thought that there was an aerothermal part of the problem that needed to be fixed, but they thought that the aerothermal problem was this small. And so they gave it to a new guy. They said, you know what, Pedro, you can do it. You can take care of it. So as I started looking into it, I realized that the aerothermal problem was, if not as important as the aerodynamic problem, it was actually more important to actually understand the aerothermal effects of removing those ramps. And so I had to prove it to my management at Boeing. I was working for Boeing, and also the management at NASA. Finally, I was able to get the management at NASA to recognize that doing a wind tunnel test, an aerothermal wind tunnel test, was an actual constraint to flight. If we didn't do the test, we were not going to be able to return to flight. So because I had started this task, they gave me the wind tunnel test project to me. And so I did the whole thing. I led a team of NASA engineers, Boeing engineers. We had consultants. We had Dr. John Burton, who actually was a professor at Rice, or he actually taught at Rice for some time. So I led that team to put together this wind tunnel test program. We finished it actually the last test that we did was on December 25th of 2004, I believe, right during Christmas. And then the following year, we were able to go get back and get to fly the shuttle again, STS-114. So just going through that whole process, building the test model, getting all the instrumentation, getting all the data, creating all the new heating environments, all of that, just putting all of that together so we can go back to flight. I think that was one of the highlights of my career. And because of that wind tunnel test and how successful it was, I was able to transfer to NASA within the following year and 2 years.
Thank you, guys. Our next question, maybe it might flip the mood a little bit. It's mostly about what helps you through any time of struggle or adversity. Doesn't have to be in while you're working in the industry. Maybe it's something that you found when you were in college or on the path to get to where you are.
I'll start with that one. So going through life, you will have different things that happen to you that impact you, that are hard for you to overcome. And I won't say that I'm lucky, but I'm lucky that I already had the worst possible thing ever happen to me. And so when I was 11 years old, my dad died right in front of me, and there was nothing I could do about it. It destroyed who I was at the time, and it was really hard to crawl out of that deep dark hole, but I did. And so now anything that happens to me is never the worst thing that's going to happen to me. I will always draw on that and say, all right, if this 11-year-old little girl who survived her dad's death can make it through that, then this disappointment isn't going to impact me, or this negative thing isn't going to impact me. So I feel I come to this with a very different set of experiences, but I always try to teach people that, because it's all about perspective. We're human, and so when our boyfriend breaks up with us, or when our girlfriend breaks up with us, or when we don't get that job, it's like the worst day ever. But the reality is, it isn't. You may not have experienced your worst day ever yet, but if you have, then you can draw a comparison and say, okay, if I was strong enough to survive this thing, then I am strong enough to survive that. So think about it in perspective of other things that you have successfully overcome.
Yeah, I guess I'll just nothing like what happened to Ginger. The one thing that I can say is that there will always be good things and bad things that are going to happen to you. That's just part of life. And I guess one thing that I did say a few years ago at a migrant conference was that you need to hold on to the positive. Don't focus on all the, you will find people that are gonna support you, people that are gonna push you forward, that are gonna help you along the way. You're also gonna find people that are not gonna help you and that are actually gonna try to hurt you. That's just part of life. And so just hold on to the positive, focus on the positive, and just ignore all those negative things that are going to be part of your life. Like we say in Spanish, I guess, que se te resbale. I'm not sure you guys understand that, but anyways, yes, just focus on the positive. Hold on to all those positive things. Understand that life is not perfect, and just push yourself up. Set goals, and always keep setting goals, new goals. Once you reach that one goal that you had, you just get another goal. Keep pushing forward.
I guess for me, having been in safety and mission assurance for 7 years now, and learning so much about all of the accidents that have happened at NASA, you learn about the culture a little bit, and you've heard maybe the phrase failure is not an option, but really at NASA, we've come to realize that there's no such thing as not having risk. Everything that you do, there's going to be some ingrained risk. My job is calculating that risk, and so I know that there's no such thing as not having risk, especially if you want to achieve great things, if you want to, you know, explore something new, there's always going to be that risk. And in order to, you know, really get to where you want to get and do the things that you want to do, there will be some setbacks, there will be failures, and it's about how you overcome those failures, how you prepare and learn from those, so that you can move on to bigger and greater things. So I think just, you know, much like NASA, everything that has happened that has led to an accident or any kind of, you know, failure that we've experienced, we've learned from it, we've investigated and really like learned and grown, and we've, you know, really teach everyone after, you know, that comes in after those events that have occurred to know not make the same mistakes again. So I think that's how you can think of it.
Thank you for all of your answers. The next question we have is from the chat. We appreciate Jeffrey for posing this question in the chat. Do you have any advice for people to be effective allies to the Latinx community in the workplace, be that at NASA, in industry, or in general?
I guess, you know, I feel like this year specifically, we've learned so much about being an ally in general, right? Just being a kind person, an understanding person, an open-minded person, learning to realize that our experiences are not the definitive, you know, experience that everyone else experiences. So, you know, I don't think that it's any different for, you know, being a Latinx ally versus any other culture or any other identity, because at the end of it, you know, we're all human, we're all, you know, we all like to be cared for and like to be appreciated, like to be understood. And really that's all it comes down to, regardless of whether that is in the workplace or whether that's in, you know, on the street.
Great. So I guess we'll move on to the next question, which is, in what direction do you see a respective area heading, respective area being, you know, what you're working on at NASA currently? Where do you see that heading with new technologies, innovations, and methods?
Can you ask that again? I'm sorry.
Sure. In what direction do you see your respective areas heading with new technologies, innovations, and methods?
All right, I'll start. So one of my offices in my directorate is like a new technologies office. And so I have the JSC chief technologist in my organization. So really what they are doing, well, they're doing a lot. They're trying to work with all of the programs across the agency to identify what we're calling technology gaps. So things that will prevent us from going back to the moon in a sustained fashion, things will prevent us from going to Mars. And they're working not only with people at NASA, but with universities, with people in industry, with commercial companies, new and existing commercial companies, to see if they can help us solve some of those technology gaps. So my organization in particular will be different today than it will be 5 years from now, because we are always continuously trying to find the next big break in technology. Once we find those technology breaks, the other thing my organization does is technology transfer. So we'll look at something and that may solve, you know, a radiation problem on going to Mars. So that's one of the issues that we have. How do we protect the astronauts for that long journey? But there might be something in that radiation research that we do that actually is a health benefit to somebody here on Earth. So that's what we call technology transfer. So as we're reaching out to try to find these solutions to problems that will help us explore beyond low Earth orbit, we're going to be taking those things and figuring out how do we benefit life on Earth. So if you fast forward 5 years from now, I would expect us to have really good advancements in technology and actually really good advancements or benefits to humanity in that time frame as well.
Yeah, and I guess I was going to say the exact same thing. When we were, I was part of the team that was working on Gateway, and we're also working on what did we call it? EMC Exploration Mars campaign. Yes, it was basically looking at all those gaps that Ginger mentioned, and one of them was propulsion, and so we're starting looking at solar electric propulsion. To be able to just even, you know, maybe the trip's gonna take a little longer, but we can actually bring more mass to Mars. And so one of them was just like that, solar electric propulsion, and that's actually being worked at this time. There was, of course, exercise systems for the astronauts for that long trip, water reclamation, oxygen generation, regeneration. And so those were the, just like she mentioned, those technologies that we need to make the trip to Mars possible. And then one of the things that I know that is one of the technologies that's being explored as we go to the lunar surface is actually extracting water and then processing that water. And so that technology is also something else that we're going to need as we make it to the Mars surface, so we can extract water from the Mars surface, process it, and then just get, you know, water, oxygen, and also get fuel for the trip back. So yes, it's a lot of different things that are needed to make not just the trip to Mars possible, but also staying on Mars and coming back from Mars possible.
Definitely. I think, you know, it's kind of nuts how many components there are to a mission. And, you know, in almost every little aspect, there's some sort of, you know, growing technology or, you know, advancement in the current technology. Specifically for the work that I do, which is, again, risk analysis, one thing that I think has grown a lot is data. You know, we don't have the advantage that, like, you know, car manufacturing or, you know, these big level manufacturing companies have of testing, just, you know, the amount of testing that they get to do and the amount of data that they have on different components and different systems. But with time now, you know, there's just been a boom in the commercial industry growing, and, you know, in increasing amount of launches, of satellite launches, of flights. And so with that comes data that we gather in order to better estimate how likely and how risky these missions are. So, yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Our next question, I think it's a good time to ask it because we were talking about, you know, like how to be an ally, even if you're not part of the Latinx community, and, you know, how you guys got to where you are in your life. Who has been your, you can say advocate, you can say mentor, right? Throughout your life might be a little too much, but like maybe your professional life, getting to where you are and everything like that. And maybe, you know, on top of that, if they did start before your professional life, because I know a lot of our students, you know, they have mentors right now, they have professors, they have people that are advocating for them. Did it continue after you got into your professional field? And if so, maybe how that happened?
All right, this is one of my favorite topics again too. So I've never, I don't think, I mean, I've met some pretty remarkable people in my life, but I don't think there's any one person that can carry you through all of the phases of your life. And so I have always sought out different mentors for different phases of my life to get me to the next step. I keep in touch with all of these people, but I don't rely on them as much during, you know, different phases. And so I think it's important that you recognize that none of us ever get to where we are by ourselves. And if you do, that was probably a really hard choice. I mean, you probably could have picked an easier road. There's someone else that has been there before you that is probably much smarter than you are about what you need to do to get there. So go find them. Don't wait for them to come to you. Go introduce yourself. Go say, hey, would you be willing to help me? I see where you are. I want to get to where you're going. How did you get there? So be courageous and reach out to people, because most people are good people and they want you to learn from their mistakes. They want you to be better than they are. So Lilibeth mentioned Ellen Ochoa. I reached out to Ellen and I said, I want to be in senior executive service one day. What do I need to do to prepare myself for that? And she helped me. But at other phases of my life, I chose dad figures because, I mentioned my dad died when I was little, and I needed this kind of dad, and then this kind of dad, and then this kind of dad. But just be honest with yourself about where your deficiencies are and go find people to help you fill them.
Yeah, I guess just like Ginger, it wasn't just a specific person, but there's always those people that are willing to help. But one of the things that I have to say is that you need to be willing to speak up. You need to be willing to reach out, just like Ginger said, because just like I said, right? So I was moved down 3 grades, and so one of the things that I had to do was to show the school administration that I knew enough, or that I knew, or that I could actually, or that I should be moved to the next grade, right? And so one of my teachers, but without me knowing, my biology or my science teacher, without me knowing, she basically took care of all the documentation to get me to go from, I believe it was from 7th to 8th grade. And she did it because the first week that I started that I was in her class, she asked questions about the periodic table. And no one knew anything about the periodic table, but since I had completed 8th grade in Mexico, I already knew about it, but I knew about it in Spanish. So I think that if you stay quiet, if you don't raise your hand and say, well, yeah, I do know that, but I know it in Spanish, then you actually just have the courage to actually speak up and answer the question. They won't notice you. And I think that the fact that I took that opportunity, I raised my hand and I answered a question, even though I answered in Spanish. I think that that's how she noticed me, and she did everything that she did to get me to go from 7th to 8th grade. And I mean, I'm gonna be forever grateful to her for what she did. But again, yes, mentors, just like Ginger said, look for what are the things that you're deficient in, and then try to get those, learn from them, learn from others. Don't be afraid to ask questions. There is no such thing as a not smart question. You always, whatever doubt you have, just reach out, ask. There's no way that you can learn from just, if you just stay with a doubt. You have a doubt, and you have no way to answer a question that you may have unless you reach out. And just like she said, don't be afraid to reach out to look up to teachers, professors, colleagues. They are willing to help. Most people, yes, are willing to help.
I guess I'll add to that. For me, I don't know about you guys, but as a child, I kind of grew up in a family of first-generation Americans, and a lot of my family, maybe were the first to graduate from high school, and maybe I have a cousin or two that have graduated college. But most importantly, I feel like there was a little bit of a gap there, or a lack of not mentors, but people, role models, and people to look up to. I didn't have a doctor, a lawyer, a scientist, an engineer, anybody like that in my family. So a lot of the time when I was growing up, it was more like self-motivation, and my dad just telling me that he wanted us to do better, right? I feel like a lot of Hispanics grow up with that desire from their parents, especially, to do better, not necessarily to learn from someone, but to do more than that. And I think that was kind of what has driven me. You know, in school, I didn't have any schools that, or a family member or anybody that I knew that had gone to Rice. But I heard about it, you know, having lived in Houston, and that's how I applied there. And I was one of the first people in my high school that got to go to Rice University. At NASA, same thing. You know, obviously I don't have anybody that has ever worked I didn't know anybody ever that had worked at NASA. But it was something that I had heard of, that I was interested in, and it was a little bit of self-motivation that had to occur. And of course, once you get to Rice, once you get to NASA or wherever, there are so many people there that are so smart and that you can learn from and grow from. So a lot of the times it was my own colleagues, my own classmates that really motivated me. I feel like at NASA, I've seen so many, you know, other early career employees that were just so smart, so involved, and were really doing great things in their projects. So I wanted to do that as well. So I feel like you don't always have to look at people above you. You can also look at the people around you and realize, you know, if they can do it, I can too. And so, yeah, that's another source.
Thank you. The next question, once again, asking about careers and decision-making. So what has been the most significant turn in your career, and how did you go about making the decision, if that decision was left to you?
All right, I'll start again. I feel weird starting all the time. So yeah, I got an opportunity to move to Russia and support the first crew that was going to be living on board the International Space Station, and it wasn't left to me. So initially, my boss just sent me out there to work on some training manuals. So I went out there to do the job that my boss told me to do. But while I was out there, I recognized that NASA had not put the right, in my opinion, my 28-year-old opinion, that NASA had not put the right infrastructure in place to do the integration of training and operations between Russia and the US. Our crew members were out there being forced to integrate the procedures that they would use to operate the space station, to integrate the training, to integrate the displays. And they were getting really frustrated and angry, and they had this bad reputation back in the US that they're just angry people. But the reality was, when I got to see things from their perspective, I realized, oh man, we didn't set this up right. And so that was a turning point in my life. I called my boss and I'm like, you know, imagine calling your boss at 28 years old and like, dude, you didn't do this right. And it wasn't even him, it was my boss's boss's boss. So I wind up talking to my boss's boss's boss. And I'm like, hey, I know you meant well, and but here's the holes in your plan, and here's how I propose to solve them. You need to create this new position that deals strictly with this integration function. And I can't do it by myself. I need 3 other people. And here I wrote like a job description and a project plan. And he's like, okay. So I created this position for myself. And that experience that I got doing that job function has enabled me to do what I do today. And so it was a unique set of experiences that NASA needed, that I benefited from, that NASA benefited from, and that afforded me a career path that otherwise would have been unavailable to me. So the message here is be bold. You know, you may be 26, 28, 24, I don't care how old, you're going to see things in a different way than everybody else. And you could be the person that solves NASA's next problem. You could be the person that solves any industry's next problem. but you're not going to solve it if you're afraid to speak up. And so take the steps necessary to benefit the organization that you're working for, and you will find that it will indirectly benefit you and your career path as well.
Okay, I guess I'll follow. So just like, so Ginger mentioned that she wanted to work at NASA since she was 5. And I bet, so Lilibeth was aware of, NASA and everything because she grew up here in Houston. So I lived in Mexico till I was 13. So working at NASA never even crossed my mind, ever. I never thought that this was even possible. And so I when I was getting my bachelor's at UT Pan American and my master's, I was somebody from Boeing approached me and they offered me a job, and that's basically how I ended up here in Houston. So working on that wind tunnel test that I mentioned before, that pretty much opened the door for me to transfer to NASA, but I was not aware that that door was open. All of a sudden, as I was done with that project, this position opened at NASA, which was basically my customer had moved on to another position, and so his position was now available. Since I had been working at Boeing for only a few years, I didn't feel that I had the qualifications, I guess, to apply for that job, and so I was hesitant to apply. It was actually because of my wife that told me to apply, and she said, what's the worst that can happen? The worst thing that can happen is that they say no, and you'll be where you are right now, so might as well just apply. And it was that decision that changed basically my life, because as soon as I applied, they told me, we're just waiting for you to apply. And so, yeah, I went for the interview. They were expecting me. It was just a very, very nice experience to just talk to everybody. And they were like, dude, we were just waiting for you to apply. And as soon as I applied, my manager at the time, he introduced me to the entire team, and he said he's going to be joining us. I hadn't even said anything. So yes, that decision, I guess. So working on that wind tunnel test program, which just like Ginger said, being bold and going to NASA management and showing them with data that yes, this test is needed. If we don't do this test, we cannot come up with a new heating environments. We cannot recertify the vehicle to fly. You need to be bold, and then you need to believe in it, that you do have the qualifications for a job at NASA and working at NASA.
For me, I guess I haven't had very many career, pivoting points yet. I think the only thing I would say is just taking advantage of those extra opportunities and not getting too comfortable. As early career employees, a lot of times we might think that we just need to bury our head into our work. And really, I feel like taking advantage of, the resource groups, getting involved there. And I was able to actually be the co-chair and then chair of the organization a few years ago, which Pedro is now the chair of. And also, applying for the academic fellowship, applying for a rotation in a different organization. Sometimes you might think, maybe I'm not ready yet. Maybe I'm comfortable here. I know the people here. I know the work here. But it's always good to just put yourself out there, not just because you'll, get to experience a lot of different things in the duties of your work, but also the connections that you make and the people that you meet in these other, opportunities. So just taking advantage of those and not being shy and not being too comfortable.
Thank you, everyone. I'm looking at the clock. We are approaching the 8 o'clock timestamp in about 1 minute and 20 seconds. But, I just wanted to express to you guys how grateful I am for you guys coming tonight, at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday. It's not, one of the main reasons that I wanted to make this happen with Ryan and Andres is because, as members of the Latino and Latina community, we're very passionate about what we do. You guys talked about it in your answers. We've always been like that ever since we've grown up. That's how we were raised. And I just wanted to something like this, you know, recorded that we could always share with any student at Rice or anywhere in the world, really, about how it's really possible, you know. And you guys have done an amazing job at showing that through your answers tonight. And I really appreciate you guys coming up with those. I know we didn't prepare you for these questions, so it was really on the fly. But so thank you so much for everything, for being with us tonight. And if Andres and Ryan, you guys can talk after me.
Yeah, sure. I would just, you know, express the same gratitude in the, I guess, thought that you put into your answers. I know I, for one, I learned something today. I hope the audience learned something today. And, you know, it's, I felt like this panel was a great celebration of achievement. And, you know, towards the end of September and going into October, Hispanic Heritage Month, it is a time to celebrate that achievement. So once again, thank you.
Thank you. That was amazing. Really, really appreciate it. It spoke to me quite a bit. It made me kind of look at my journey, but I could still learn so much from your experiences as well.
Thank you, guys. Thank you to all of our audience and everybody who will be watching this recording afterwards. Thank you to our panelists again for taking the time to share their experiences tonight. And thank you to our audience joining us tonight. And we hope everybody learned something new from today. You guys have a great Tuesday night and a great rest of the week. Thank you.
You too. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.